After Effects 24.1 is here, and we got a whole new dimension using dedicated 3D related features such as native model import, alignment tools, image-based lighting, and high-fidelity GPU-accelerated renders. So in this tutorial, I'll show you how you can use Substance Painter and Stager to texture and prepare models and then export them to After Effects where we can animate and render them. It's going to be a long, in-depth tutorial, and as always there are chapter markers underneath, so feel free to skip to the part that you want to see. But if you want to get the full story, please stick around with me here and I'll show you everything that you need to know about these new exciting features. Let's go! Now a quick disclaimer before we start. This is version 1 of the new 3D experience in After Effects, meaning that although Adobe worked on this for a couple of years, it's still in its infancy. Things are going to improve in the future in terms of performance and render quality, as well as integration with the Substance family. You may also wonder how it is compared to plugins like Element 3D, Helium, or Cineware. Well, I'm going to share with you my conclusion at the end of this video, after we'll see what's possible in this release. But I'm here to tell you that this is not going to replace your 3D pipeline. It can't compete with dedicated 3D packages such as Blender, Cinema 4D, and other tools. There are limitations of what you can achieve, but it is a step in the right direction. And it will allow you to import and animate real 3D models natively without leaving the familiar AE interface, and from my experience, it's stable and ready for prime time. So on a high-level note, we are getting 7 new things: 3D model import, image-based lighting, advanced 3D renderer, 2D and 3D integration, animated lights and cameras, 3D snapping, and 3D model-driven effects. Now, I'm not going to cover everything in this tutorial, so there will be a follow-up video very soon where I'll focus on some of the other features such as image-based lighting, integration between 2D and 3D layers, and applying effects. So stay tuned for that. And also, let me know in the comments what else would you like me to show you. For now, I'll start by taking this steampunk watch that I got from Sketchfab. There is a link in the description. I'll download the model and I'll open it inside Substance Painter. Over here, of course, we can take a look around the model, and there are a few layers. I'll get to these layers in a moment, but for now, let's select the topmost layer and I'll search for the word part, which is going to isolate all the particle brushes, which is a great way to texture a model. For example, if I'll take this glitter party, just to show an example, and I'll brush over here, you can see how this works. Now, obviously, this is not what I want, so maybe let's start with some broken glass. I'll raise the size over here to something a bit bigger, and then I'll start to click. And every time I'm clicking, I'm painting with particles and creating this broken glass texture on the model. And of course, this is all 3D. So you can get a sense of how this works. We can have more over here, maybe more over here. And then let's switch to another one, this organic strands. And I'll click to paint with this brush. Maybe raise the size of it as well. So we'll have bigger particles. And every time I'm clicking, I'm basically destroying this material using this particle brush. So this is really a cool way to work. And of course, this is not going to be a Substance tutorial. So I'll click again to stop the particles. And I want to show you how you can save and send it to After Effects. So I'll press Command S and I'll save it in my Documents folder. I'll call it Steampunk Watch. And now I'll go to the Edit menu, and from the Send To options, we have a new command, Send to After Effects. You can configure how you want to send it. The default settings, if I'll show you, are to save with the GLB file format. You can also use the GLTF. Both of them are going to be respected by After Effects, meaning that the materials are going to be embedded inside the model. and you can set the output directory. So I'll cancel out, go again to File, Send to After Effects, and I'll select Send to After Effects. It's going to process everything that it needs. It's also going to give you a log. If you want, you can read it. And if After Effects was not running, it will also launch After Effects for you. In my case, I'll switch to After Effects, which is running in the background. And we can see that the steampunk watch model is ready inside its own folder to be used. So all I need to do right now is just drag and drop it to create a new composition out of this model. I'll click on Make Comp Size, and I'll click OK. And then we can take a look around this model. As we can see, everything is working really nicely. If I'll press and hold the digit 3, I can track into the model. 1 is going to orbit around it, and 2, of course, is pan under the cursor. And as we can see, all the textures that I've created inside Painter are now embedded into this model, and I can start animating it. However, I want more access. I want to separate those parts and animate the individual objects inside After Effects. So for that, I'll return back to Painter, and instead of sending this to After Effects, I'll choose File, Send to, and I'll use the third option, Send to Substance 3D Stager. Now, I love working with Stager, as this is, to my opinion, one of the most intuitive and simple 3D apps to set up models, clean them up, and preview the result. So my plan is to use Stager to separate the part of the model, and this way I can animate each one individually inside After Effects. But first, we need to export each one of the models so it will be combined later in the comp stage. Over here in the import settings, you can choose if you want to include the unused materials, as well as generate UVs, which I'm going to accept. If you don't want to see this dialog box, you can tick the Do Not Show Again. Let's just click on Import, wait a few moments, and here we have our steampunk watch inside Stager. I'll press F to frame it, and I'm also going to open the folder to show you that I already separated all the different objects. So we have access to the cup that I can switch on and off. And of course, to see how this looks from a better angle, I'll hold the Option Alt on Windows and orbit around this model. And then I can show you that I can take off this cup. I can also hide the glass to see inside the watch. There are other elements here, such as the hour hand, the temperature needle. You can see I'm switching them on and off. This is the hide needle. Hopefully you can see it. We're going to take a better look at them once we are going to send them to After Effects, but I just want to show you that indeed we have separated objects. And this means that I can now select the individual part and I can export them to After Effects. So for example, I can select just the body, go to File, Export, Selected Models, and now I can change the format to GLB. I will take off the center models on export, and this is because I want to keep the 3D position of each one of the different objects, because I'm planning to then reassemble them inside After Effects. So wait, it will be clearer in a moment when we are going to import them to After Effects. But for now, I'm just going to name this one Watch Body. I'll save it on the desktop for now and click Export. Then I'll select the cup and I'll do the same thing because I want to animate it inside After Effects. And my plan is to change its rotation X. Of course, I will also need to move the anchor point so I will be able to open the cup and then, of course, animate the different elements such as the hour hand, the temperature needle, the height needle, etc. So I'll repeat the same process, going to File, Export, Selected Model. This one is the cup, so I'm just going to name it Cup, and I'll save it on the desktop, click Export, and then I'll do the same thing over and over again. If you don't have access to the Substance apps, you can use other 3D packages to achieve the same results. Blender, Cinema 4D, 3ds Max, Maya, or any other 3D package that supports GLB or GLTF export should do the job. You can also, by the way, use the OBJ format, but then you'll need to manage the textures in a separated folder. So as I told you, from version 24.1 of After Effects, we can natively import 3D models into their own compositions in a unified 3D space. And this means that we can also integrate it with 3D shapes and text. But now, let's import all the 3D models that we've exported from Stager and set them up for animation. So back in After Effects, I'll do some housekeeping. I'll rename this composition 1. I'll take it outside of this folder. And I'm also going to delete this folder. We are going to re-import all the materials and reconstruct the steampunk watch. So I'll press delete and remove this one. I'm also going to press Command K and change the comp settings to 25 frames per second, as well as change the duration to 10 seconds. And now I'm ready to bring all the different components that I've exported from Stager. So I'll double click and I'll go to the desktop and select all of the GLB 3D objects, click open, and everything is going to be imported and placed inside its own folder. Now, this is not the way that I would like to work. So I'll command click on one of those files, and then I'll take all the rest and place them inside a single folder. I'll call this one 3D objects, and then I can delete all the unnecessary folders. And this is just going to give us a more tidier project. Then I'll start with the watch body. So I'll drag and drop it to this composition. And in this case, I don't want to use the make comp size. And this is because I want each one of the individual parts to be at the same 3D position. So don't be tempted to click over here, just click OK. Instead, what I'll do is switch from my active camera to custom view 1. Then I'll press and hold 3 to get to the dolly tool, zoom out, press and hold 2. And this is going to allow me to pan this view and maybe also press 1 and orbit. I just want to get a better angle so I can see what I'm doing. So something along these lines I think is going to work for the first stage. All right, the next one is the cap. I'm just going to drag and drop it over here and I'll click OK. And you can see that it will respect the same 3D coordinates. All right, I'll switch off the visibility of the cap. And then I can just shift select all the other models, drag and drop them to the comp, and click OK a few times until everything is going to be placed in the scene in its correct location. And of course, we can switch on and off those layers if you want to verify that everything is working. Now, the next thing is to select all the layers and parent them to the watch body. And this will help us to move everything as a single group. So now, just for the sake of demonstration, you can see that if I'm moving the watch, all the other parts are moving with it. Now, the cap layer is hidden at the moment, so let's just turn it back on. And what we need to do is move the anchor point so we can animate its X rotation to create some sort of an opening. And to do this, I'll switch to the pan behind tool, and I can start to drag it and notice that I'm getting some new 3D alignment tools, which is a new feature of this version. So I'll place it somewhere over here and then I'll move just the X axis and then I'll hold down the Option key. This is going to give me a temporary camera tool. And now with the left mouse button, I can orbit around the scene just to make sure that indeed this is where it needs to be. And it's not, so I will take it over here. And then again, I'll check it from a different angle. And you may need to just fiddle with it and move it until it's in the correct position. So something like this looks like it is working for us. And to check how this looks, I can go to the X rotation and I can do this number to open up the cap and see everything which is underneath. Now, to save some time, I already modified the anchor point for the rest of the 3D layers, and then I saved my progress in a separated comp, which I'm going to switch to now and show you the animation process. So I'll close this composition and open up Steampunk Watch 2, and now let's animate the different layers. We'll start with the cup. So I'll create a keyframe for the X rotation at the beginning here, and then I'll go to 5 seconds, and I can either use the properties panel, or because the properties panel exposed this value here in the timeline, I can actually animate it from here. So I'll set it to -125, and then I'm also going to press F9 to easy ease the motion. Now, instead of waiting for After Effects to preview it, which is not a big deal, I can actually switch to the Draft 3D. And the new advanced 3D renderer is basically a high-performance GPU-powered engine. And this means that it will offer you high-quality anti-aliasing and transparency options using, by the way, the fast draft mode, which can display most of these features in real time. So I highly recommend to use it when you are building your comp and animating your 3D layers. So after switching it to Draft 3D, this is the preview. Again, more or less the same thing, but now we can animate the other layers. So I'll leave the glass alone. I'll select the temperature needle. I'll go to the beginning, by the way, and just so we'll see what happens, I'll switch off the visibility of both the cup and the glass layers. And this will help us see better the individual layers. So in this case, I would like to animate the Y rotation over here. Now, instead of animating it using keyframes, I'm going to option click on the stopwatch near the words Y rotation in the properties panel, which is going to open it in the timeline, as well as give me the ability to type in something, which is going to be the wiggle expression. So I'll start to type it, and After Effects is going to finish the typing for me. Inside the parentheses, I'll type in 1 for the frequency and 150 for the magnitude. And then I'll press return or enter to accept it. And now if I press spacebar, you can see the needle here for the temperature is just going to wiggle around. All right, let's do something similar for the hour hand. I'll collapse this layer, select the hour hand. Again, I'm after the Y rotation for most of these layers, so I'll option or alt click to expose this value. At the same time, create an expression for it. This one is going to be the time expression, and I'll multiply it by 24. And now this is how it looks. All right, I'll pause the playback. I'll select the height needle, and I'll do the same thing. So option, clicking on the Y rotation, and this one is going to get a different expression just because I want to use this to show you a few other ways to work. So I'll go to the beginning, and first I'll use keyframes to animate it. I'll start with the current value, which is -150 degrees, and then I'll go to 1 second, and I'll highlight the value, type in -130, and this is going to give us this animation that stops after 1 second. However, in the expression field, we can start to type the word loop. I'll select the loop out expression, and then I'll add double quotes. And from the options that After Effects is offering us, I'll select the continue behavior and click outside. And this is just going to continue the same motion. So if I want this motion to be quicker, I can just contract the keyframes distance, and this is going to just move this needle faster. All right, the last one, let's just close those two, select the compass needle, and this one is also going to get a wiggle expression. So option, click on the Y rotation directly from the properties panel, start to type the word wiggle, and over here inside the parentheses, 2,50, I think, is going to give us the desired values. And as you can see, this is working like so. If I'll bring back the glass layer, we can see it through the glass. And of course, we also have the cup animation, which is going to open up like so. Now in this composition, I can see that I forgot to parent everything to the watch body. So I'll select all the layers and I'll pick whip the watch body, meaning that I can now move the entire thing. And as you can see, the animation is going to still work. All right, I'll undo the last operation and I'll click on the shy icon, which is going to show us that we have few other elements that I've placed in this composition. So I've duplicated the watch body 3 times, and each one of these copies is scaled up as well as oriented in 3D space. So if I'll switch on the visibility of this one, you can see how this looks. I'm going to zoom out and then orbit around the scene just so we'll get a sense of how I've constructed these 3 copies. This is another instance of the same 3D model, and here we have another one. And if I'll hold down the Option key, Alt on Windows, and click on my left mouse button, you can see that we can move inside this 3D space. And of course, we can zoom in and out, as well as create a camera and animate it. So again, just to save some time, I already did it ahead of time. So I will enable the camera that I have in the scene, as well as the null object, which is a camera orbit null. So I'm using it to control the camera. Now I'll click and hold on this pop-up menu and switch to camera 1. So we are now looking through the lens of this camera. And if I'll move the current time indicator, you can see how this works. Actually, because we are using Draft 3D, we can just preview it in real time by pressing spacebar. To light everything, we can use the new environment light, which will cast shadows and create a realistic natural look. By the way, you can also marry it with a 360-degree high dynamic range image, also known as HDRI, and this is going to serve as a light source, making all the objects appear as though they are naturally belonging together. Now I'll save this part to another tutorial, but in this video I'll show you how to set up the environment light, as well as share a few tips regarding the shadow render settings. So here at the end of my composition, I'll go to the layer menu, and under new, I'll create a new light. From the light type options, I'll select an environment light, and I'll make sure to tick cast shadows. And this is going to make all the layers automatically cast shadows one on top of the other. Now you have control on the area which After Effects is going to calculate the shadows within. And to show you how this looks, I'll click OK. And then to see those shadows, we'll need to switch off Draft 3D, wait a few moments. And if you can't see anything, this is probably due to the fact that you need to define the renderer options. So I'll visit the renderer options from here. Over here, you can change the render quality. By the way, this slider go all the way up to 300, but I found out that a value around 50 usually yield very good results. Then you can change the resolution of your shadow. So I'll set mine to full. And finally, you can use this button to fit the shadow box to the scene. So if I'll click on Fit to Scene, it's going to look at all of the layers, and hopefully you can see there is a pink box which is going to tell us where the shadows are going to be cast. You can also move the box center if you need to modify it. Now, my recommendation is not just to click on this button, because usually this is an overkill setting and it's going to bring your computer on its knees. So I recommend to start with a value which is double the size of your comp. In my case, I'm just going to type in 3000, and then I'll tap to the X, and this will refresh the render since the preview checkbox is active. And now I can move the X, Y, and Z position of this box. So I'll start by typing in 1500 for the X, and then I'll tap to the Y, type in 1500 for the Y, and 0 for the Z. As you can see, after a moment, After Effects is going to show us this pink box, giving us an indication where those shadows are in the scene, or where actually we are casting them. Now, if you want a smoother shadow, you can raise the smoothness over here. I'll leave it at 3 because I think it looks good enough, and then I'll click OK. Another thing you can do is open up the transform for the light, and you can also animate the light X and Y rotation. So let's create a keyframe for X rotation at the end with this value of 0. And then let's go to the beginning of this composition. We'll need to wait for After Effects to catch up. We can click and drag on this value, and it's going to update the render view. So I'll set it to -200, more or less. And by the way, this is something that you can actually preview using Draft 3D. So if I enable Draft 3D, you can see that as I scrub these parameters, I'm getting a real-time feedback from the advanced 3D renderer. And of course, you also have the option to tie it up with an HDRI image, which you can do after bringing an HDR image over here, and then use this source pop-up menu. And this is something that I'm going to cover in another tutorial. But for now, I'm just going to preview in Draft 3D the motion of the light, the animation of the light, and of course, anytime I'll pause the playback and switch off Draft 3D, After Effects is going to calculate the shadows. Let's just check them in a different place. Let's say over here at 4 seconds, just so you can see that the shadows are being casted, in this case, on the other 3D objects. So this is again the before, the Draft 3D without the shadows, and this is with the shadows. And now we are ready to render it. So I'll go to the beginning, I'll maximize the frame, and I'll preview this composition. So this is how you can use Substance Painter and Stager to prepare and separate 3D models and then import them to After Effects and animate them here. As I mentioned, if you don't have access to the Substance apps, you can still use other 3D packages to achieve the same result. Now, as you can see, the render quality looks decent, but cannot compete with 3D professional engines such as Redshift, Octane, Eevee, or Cycles. It won't give you the same results as Unreal or V-Ray or Arnold, not even close. It's more closer to Element 3D, Stardust, Helium, or Mir, which are some plugins that are available, and arguably, I would say it is not even coming close to these guys. However, not everyone can afford a third-party solution, and sometimes you just need a simple MoGraph mockup tool that will later be improved in a dedicated 3D suite. Now, what I'm trying to say here is that for the current built-in technology that we have, I think it's good enough. Now, if you're willing to invest time in crafting the textures inside Substance, you can achieve even better results. The good news is that everything is happening inside the familiar interface of After Effects, and finally, we can enjoy a real 3D unified space that all the layers are interacting together. Now, as I mentioned in the outset of this tutorial, there are even more stuff that you can achieve, and I will cover them in an upcoming tutorial. So make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell icon to be notified. Until then, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.